this video, we will see how we can incorporate the recycler view also inside of Fragments. So this is just the example that we're going to build today. And you will see it's not a very beautiful example, but I want to get to the functionality of this example. And you can see then for the functionality here, there's our recycler view that is part of a fragment that I have on the left hand side. Then I have two different fragments here that we can use to display the data. So for example, if I click on Chuck Norris there, you can see the data is displayed in the top fragment, and then in the bottom fragment I can add a new person. Let's just have the Nelson Mandela, say next, give him a telephone number, say done, and then if I click on add person, you can see it's been added to the list. So if I click then on Nelson Mandela, I can see the information on Chuck Norris, John Rambo, Peter Pollock, Peter, and Nelson Mandela, 100% with all the information. So how does these components then communicate with each other in order to get one application that works as three different fragments? So let's see how we can do this. So the first thing that you'll need is to have the implementation of the recycler view as well as the card view there. So just make sure that your version number there at the end must be the same version number that you have for your support library for AppCompat. Right, so then we can start with the application. So I'm going to create those three fragments quickly. So you're going to go into your Java folder, into your package, and we're going to create new, go to fragment, and fragment blank. So the first fragment I'm going to create is again the list frag, which will show a list of all those different people. And we're not going to include these, we will do it ourselves, and you're going to say finish there. Right, so let's create another fragment again. So you're going to say new, fragment again, blank one again, and let's call this one the detail frag, which we will show the detail of that specific person, just his name and his telephone number. And then we'll create one last one there, so it's the third fragment, and we'll use this one, or maybe call this one add person fragment, and then also make sure you don't check those and say finish. So just make sure that your add person frag looks something like this, the detail frag also something like this, and the list frag also something like this. If you've got a lot of information here, it means that you checked one of those boxes there when you created the fragment. And then I would suggest you remove that fragment and then start again by creating an empty fragment like we have here. Right, then if you go into your colors XML, so I'm going to go into my colors XML. I've just changed some colors there for the primary dark, and the light, as well as the accent colors. So I've got my colors there, and the reason why I'm going to use different colors here is it's easier to see where you're going to place your fragments on the layout if you have different colors there. So please make sure that you get some colors there for your colors XML file, and remember that you can go to the materialpalette.com, and that you'll get all of your different colors that you can choose from. So you can get some colors there, or you can just quickly type these colors that I have there. So I've basically just added this one there, which is the color primary light. For the rest it will be there, and you can just change your colors. So now let's just close a few of these files that was opened now, and I basically only want the XML files now. So let's go to fragment list first, and I'm going to change this to be a linear layout, and then I'm going to remove this text view, and I'm going to set the orientation to be vertical, and I want to set a background color here as well. So let's take the background color as the accent color for the list, and then we're going to go to detail fragment and do the same thing. I'm going to make that a linear layout that is, it's got an orientation of vertical, and we're going to set the background color there as well. So let's set that background color as the primary dark color. I'm going to remove this text view with the comment there, and then let's go to the person one, and we're going to set this one also to a linear layout that is vertical, and we're going to set the background, let's set this background to the light, the primary light color, and then remove the text view. So if we go to design, this one will be a light color, this one will be the dark color, and this one will be the accent color. So now there's the three different fragments, easily to see which one are we currently showing on the main activity. And now we want to go to the main activity. So in the main activity, let's leave this as a constraint layout. I'm just going to remove the text view there. In fact, let's change this to a linear layout, and I'll show you the problem we will get later on. So I'm going to change this to a linear layout, and let's set the orientation to be vertical. Now if we go into I think let's make the phone landscape. So I'm going to make this application a landscape application. Okay, so remember that we want to basically get something that looks like this. So we're going to have our list fragment on the left hand side, and then we're going to have our detail fragment and our new person or add person fragment. Right, so let's see if we can add, I think I'm going to make this one not vertical but horizontal. And then inside of this horizontal linear layout, we will drag in firstly the one fragment there. So we're going to drag in one fragment, and the first one will be the list frag. So we drag in the list frag, and then after that one, I'm going to have a layout which will be a vertical linear layout. So there we go. If you look at our layout here, it's basically a horizontal linear layout. This one first, and then I have a vertical one with the two fragments vertically. Okay, so I'm going to have another two fragments there. Let's go to comment again, common again, and go into fragment there. The first one we want to show in that vertical linear layout will be the detail fragment. And then after that one, we will show the add person fragment. Right, so there's your componentry. It should look something like this. So the first one there is your list frag, the second one is the detail frag, and the third one is the add person frag. So let's just quickly have a look at what we have here. So for your fragments, set the height to match the parent. And then on these two also, the height should match the parent. And this one also, the height should match the parent at this stage. We will change it now just to see something on the screen. Okay, so the width and the height is matching the parent. That one is also matching the parent. Okay, so let's go into the text part now. And what we want to do for this linear layout that is vertical is we want to set the weight for this fragment. So I'm going to go into setting a weight property there, and let's make the weight for that fragment 1, and we also make the weight for this fragment 1. And then for this weight to actually appear, I'm going to set the width, no, sorry, not the width. Let's have the width match the parent. We'll have the height set as 0 dp. And then also the height here, we'll set the height as 0 dp. So let's just see what happened now. You can see the two fragments are now displayed nicely vertically. This one taking half of the screen, that one taking half of the screen. And now you can also set, let's set this fragment to a weight of 1, which means that this fragment's width should become 0 dp, and your width for your linear layout should also become 0 dp. And then we have the layout looking like this. So now what we can do is to make this one a bit smaller. So we can go and say, well, let's set this one's weight, or the first fragment's weight, to 1, and this one's weight to 2. So you'll get something like this. Your list view there, your detail, and your fragment to add a new person there. And now in order to set the pictures, or the layout files to look like this, this, and this, we need to go into the error that is shown there in red. It says unknown fragments. So it says the one for the list frag, can we use fragment list? Yes, pick it. Go down to this one. For detail frag, yes, click on that one. And for your last one there, add person frag, is it add person? Yes, it is. So if yours are not displaying like that, there's other way also to do it by clicking on your fragment, and you'll see there's a layout property there. So there's the layout that you can go and choose then. Going to the 3 dots there and choosing your layout for that specific fragment. So there you can see now I can choose which fragment or which XML file now to use there. So you can also do it that way. So now you can see this looks nice. Let's go and have a look at what we see inside of the text tab. you can see that it says that nested weights are bad for performance, which means that on the outside we've got a fragment with a weight of 1 and a linear layout with a weight of 2. And that is inside of this horizontal layout basically. So if you look at the design, it's this horizontal layout. We've got a fragment and a linear layout, and they've got a weight of 1 by 2. Now if we go back, then inside of this linear layout that is vertical, so it's now this one there, this one, we've got also 2 fragments with weights. This one's weight is 1 and that one's weight is 1. So they say that nesting weights inside of a layout isn't bad for performance. So let's see if we can do this another way. So I'm going to change this to a constraint layout, and then I'm going to remove the orientation as horizontal there. For this fragment, let's set the width for this fragment as 200 just to see it on the screen, and we set the width of the linear layout to 200 as well just to see it on the screen. And then we're going to remove these weight properties to make sure that they are not there anymore. So let's go back to design, and you'll see now that for this fragment, or let's go to this linear layout, and we just move it a bit from the side, you can see that's now basically a layout where we can move the components on the screen. That's like a relative type of layout. You can change it where, or move it where you want to have it on the screen. So that's essentially not actually what we want. So what I want is to put this fragment against the side, and for this you can see that there's now some markers on the left, the top and the bottom and the right edges of this fragment, and the same for this linear layout. You can see there's the markers, and we need to give them constraints to say where should it be fixed, because if there's no constraints your layout will just do something weird. So let's run this quickly and see how it runs. You will see that the layout looks like this, which means that with no constraints, it's actually pushing everything there on the side. So if I take those, it's actually pushing everything there. So it is there, but you just can't see it. So what we need to do is to give some constraints to these components on the screen. So I'm going to set a constraint for this one. So I'm holding in on that side, and I say the constraint for this one should be, it must always be to the left or against this wall on the left. And then the same for that one at the top. I'm going to move it to the top of the screen, and this one to the bottom of the screen, which means that this specific fragment will be fixed to the left hand side, to the top of the screen and the bottom of the screen. And if you double click it now, you go down to view fewer attributes, you can see there's the constraints that you just created. So I've got no constraint on the right hand side, but there's a left, a top and a bottom constraint. Now for the left constraint, you can see there's a margin of 8 or some padding there on the left hand side of 8. So I'm going to actually make that 0 there, and you can see now it's fixed to the side. And for this one to the top, also a 0, and for the bottom also a 0. And now you can see it's fixed with no space in between, to the left, the top and the bottom. Now let's do the same for the linear layout on this side. So for this linear layout, I want to have it fixed at the top, on the right, on the bottom, and on the right hand side, not to the edge of the screen, but to the edge of this component. Okay, so now we've got a problem because of the width that we set there. So I'm going to set the width to 0 again, and then you can see it fills out the whole space there for you. Okay, so now you can see at the top and the bottom and the right and the left, there's some margins again. So let's go into view fewer attributes, and we're going to set those margins to 0, to 0, to 0 again, and to 0 again. And now we have exactly the same layout that we had with the linear layout. So if we run this now, let's see how this functions. And now you can see we are back with this layout where we have our list view, our detail view, and where to add a new person. Okay, so I think the layout is now fine, and if you go back to text now, you won't see any of those warnings that is affecting your performance. So this is a nice way to go and have a look at your constraint layout, and it resizes your components to make use of the constraints that you've given it. Right, so now let's go to the list, the fragment list there. Instead of having that orange color now, let's just remove the color. And we're going to drag in now the recycler view. So just take your recycler view and place it there on the screen, and you'll see it shows. If you go to your main activity, you can see that's now the fragment. So as soon as you've got your colors sorted out wherever every fragment will be, then you can start designing how every fragment will look. So for this fragment, we'll basically just show the list. So click on it, give your list an ID. I'm just going to call it list, or that's the recycler view, but I'm going to call it list. Then if we go to the detail fragment at the top, let's just also put it on landscape mode so it's easier to see what's going on. I'm going to change that background color also, remove it, and then I'm going to add a picture here. So remember in our example, if I can just quickly run it again. In our example, we had something like this. So we are now defining how the detail part should look. Okay, so we'll have a picture there at the top, then the guy's name and his telephone number, and that's the top fragment. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's go and add that picture quickly. So I'm going to go to Resources, New, Vector Asset. Let's just go to that contact picture there, contact phone, and you say OK there, and let's call it contact. Say next, and say finish. So now let's see if we can add that picture then there. So you'll see on the phone it looks like this. The picture at the top, then 2 text views. So let's add an image view there. Go to Project, choose the picture, say OK. Now for this picture, let's make it a bit bigger. So let's make this picture 70 by 70. And then we can put it in the middle of the screen by saying, go to Layout Gravity, Center Horizontal. I think actually it's got some white space at the top, so I'm not going to add margins at the top. Then directly after that, we'll have 2 text views. One to display the name and the other one for the telephone number. Now for this one, let's make it a bit more style. Let's make the style bold, and let's make maybe the size of the text. Let's make it a 16 there, 16 SP, just to have it. Although I think probably it's an 18 there on the video, or on the, just see there, could probably be an 18 there. Okay, so we're going to have that one bold and this one not bold. Right, and then both of these 2 components, let's have them also in the middle of the screen, but you can see they span the whole screen. So for that, we need to go into the gravity and say center horizontal, and it will put the text in the middle of the screen. Right, so this layout should be fine. If you look at it, it looks like this. Right, so if we quickly go back to it, let's just set some IDs there. So for this one, let's just say TV name, and for this one, TV tel. Right, so that's basically it for this fragment. If you go and have a look at it, that's how it looks. So let's do the bottom one quickly, and you'll see we've got some space left there for this fragment. So what we could actually do there is to go into this part, and instead of saying 1, 1, we can do something like that one taking up 2 and this one taking up 3 to give it a bit more space for the bottom part. If you want a bit more space there for the top one, we can make it, let's say 3, 4, and then we'll have a bit more space for the top one. Okay, so it's up to you how you want to set those weights. So let's go to the bottom one quickly, and that's the detail one. No, sorry, the add person one. Let's also put this in landscape so we can see what's going on. I'm going to set, or just take away the background color there. And then for this one, if we look at the phone again, we will have an edit text, another edit text, and a button. So it's basically your person, the name of the person, the telephone number of the person, and a button that says add the person. Right, let's drag into, so the first one is the person's name, so we can just drag in a normal plain edit text. And then the second one is a telephone number, so let's drag in the phone. And then the last thing will be the button that we're going to drag in. So now for all 3 of these, let's set the width to wrap the content. Let's go down and we set the layout gravity to be center horizontal so that everything is in the middle of the screen. So now at the top, we'll see if it's necessary to actually add something there at the top. So look at your main activity now. It will look something like this. Right. So go back to add person. And for this one, let's remove the text property because we're working with hints. Go down to the hint and let's just give the hint there, enter person name. Come on. Enter person name. And for this one, enter person telephone number. And then for both these two components, we can also set the gravity to center horizontal. Now for the button, let's go set the text for this button as add person. Let's set the background color to be the primary color. And then we can go down and set the text color to a white. Right, so now this button is a bit small, so let's just go to a margin at the top. Let's give it a 10 margin there to move it down a bit. And let's give it some padding also. So let's give it padding on the left, let's say 20. And on the right also 20, just to have a bit bigger button. Right, so there we go. I think if we go back to the main activity, this now looks fine. So if you look at the layout that we had there, I think it's basically, it even looks better maybe. Okay, so that's the layout that we have currently. Now for these components on your add person, let's just give it names also. So this one is going to be et name. This one will be et tel. And this one will be btn add. So now in the main activity is where we're going to interact with these two components. Remember that this one will basically handle everything inside of the list frag, but these components we will need to interact with in the main activity. So go to your main activity quickly, and we're going to set up these components. So for your first fragment, which is the detail fragment, we've got two text views, TV name as well as TV tel. So let's go to main activity. Let's set them up. So we're going to have text view, TV name, and we're going to have TV tel. So that's on the detail fragment. On the add person fragment, we've got et name, et tel, and btn add. So it's going to be edit text, et name, et tel, and then a button that will be btn add. Right, so let's set them up quickly. So it's going to be TV name equals find the view by its ID r.id.tv name. We're going to have TV tel there equals find the view by its ID r.id.tv tel. Then we're going to have et name there equals find the view by its ID r.id.et name. We will also have et tel there equals find the view by its ID r.id.et tel. Then the last component there is the button, so we're going to have btn add equals find the view by its ID r.id.btn add. Right, and then for the button, we want to have an on-click listener there, so that if we click the on-click listener, or we click the button, the on-click listener will run, and we can then see what new person to add. Right, so I think I'm going to stop the video here, and then in the next video we'll carry on and see how we can build the recycler view so that we can actually start seeing something there. If we run this now, you will only basically see the components on the screen, but nothing in the list view, because we haven't set anything to this list or to the recycler view. Right, so you can see an empty recycler view, but we see these components on the screen. So I'm going to stop the video here, and then I'll see you in the next video.